Hello, everybody. I am Mickey. I'm Not Your Mama's Minister, and today I thought I'd tackle something that is in the news a lot, but I wanted to take it from a spiritual point of view because, of course, that's what we do here. So I specifically wanted to talk about gender. All right, so we're going to try and kind of leave the political or even the scientific out because, of course, that's not my realm of expertise. It's more of the spiritual or, yeah, spiritual. I was going to include religious, but I'm going to go ahead and leave out religion as well. So I'm just going to talk about the mythology behind all of the different religions, all of the entities, all of the deities that are in the divine world. Um, so even creatures that are kind of in this considered in the spirit world or so forth. So if you look at the history of the various mythologies of the world, whether those mythologies turned into organized religions or whether they simply died away because people stopped worshiping specific smaller deities or they were replaced by others or kind of worked in together. That happens as well. And so, if you look at all of those, they all tell stories not only about same sex relationships or multiple partners, etc., etc. Hang on. We're going to put this on silent just a second. Wait. Silent. Right? There we go. So, anyway, but so there wasn't really that stigma, and probably because ancient man understood that, you know, there wasn't this law that was laid down that said you can't bang who you want to bang if it's um, the same sex. In addition to that, we also had the um, I guess, gender benders or the transgender or the cross dressers. We had all of that as humanity, just like we still do. And so, because of course mythology was based on mankind, we're the ones that came up with those myths, regardless of what religion it is, regardless of what path it is. It's still men setting down those stories, or women in some cases, but definitely mankind. And so, anyway, going back to the gender thing. So, spiritually speaking, there wasn't that issue. No matter, I mean, even if you look at let's look at something a little bit stricter, the Nordic deities. Now, you know, I love me some blonde boys, but having to do with the Nordic religion, there wasn't really a lot of LGBTQ stories in the mythology. However, there was Loki, and Loki kind of broke all of the molds that people tried to stick him into because that's what trickster gods do, regardless of the pantheon. And so Loki goes and turns himself into a mare so he can bang this, you know, super duper mystical cool horse and stallion. And so he bottoms for this stallion and then gives birth to a foal. So those kinds of things like that, the stories are there. So even in those, I guess, tribes or cultures where they may not have leaned so much towards those stories, they still had the gender fluidity. And I think that there are a number of people who are not of those more strict religions or organized religions who still kind of have a little bit of an issue with the whole gender fluidity. And so, coming from a spiritual point of view and also from a spiritual counselor, spiritual teacher, you have to remember that if we are going to aspire as mankind to divinity, to more enlightened creatures, then wouldn't we take into consideration that divinity itself is gender fluid? There is no rule or regulation that is set down that these deities, these spirits, these entities cannot go back and forth between genders, and sometimes genderless if they choose. So, why then would it become a point of contention amongst us if we're looking at it from a spiritual point of view? Now, you can look at it any way you want, having to do with political or uh, sociological or anthropological or fucking any other of the sciences. You can even go ahead and address it from your religious doctrine. But if we are going to realistically look at what the divine would consider to be um, fine, part of being human, part of life, part of the awesome things that we can do with ourselves, based on what we identify as, based on what we feel like, based on what we aspire to be. And so then, spiritually speaking, it then becomes a moot point. You need to leave out the spiritual aspect if you're talking about gender issues. If you're saying, well, my God, no, that's not true. And so you have to look at what the divine already is and what we are aspiring to be, and then realize that it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter of which gender you are, if you are a gender, what you identify as. And everybody else may think, what? What the fuck? But that doesn't matter, does it? Because you should know that between you and whatever deity you worship, if you do, or whatever energy that you work with, the most important thing is that you feel comfortable being yourself. And so, whatever yourself might be, you know, insist that the rest of us remember that the gods do it all the time. The gods slip back and forth. They don't even pick and choose and just stick with that one. They slip back and forth. Wouldn't that be awesome? I mean, personally, I like being a chick, but imagine how less alone we would feel if we each got to experience what how the other half lives. And so, pretty much, any of you who are not of those organized, stricter religions, remember that, because I am hearing some of you pagans, do the whole, well, that's not a real thing. Well, yeah, it is, because our fellow brother or sister or gender fluid sibling is still a part of us, and they are going through that experience, which means that it's a real thing. So that's not too hard to understand, is it? And I am not that smart. If I can get it, you can get it. I think that might be it about gender. Yeah, so much love, many blessings, and you do you, but don't be a douchebag. I think that's it. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment.